You may now be seated. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some of the many special guests that we have here with us today. First, the Honorable Governor of Nevada, Steve Sisolak. Thank you for being here. Representing the Office of the General Consul of France, Honorary Consul for Las Vegas and Southern Nevada, Sebastien Thevenin. Representing the Office of Jackie Rosen, District Representative Dane Hudson. Nevada Department of Veterans Services Director, Kat Miller. Len Yelnick, State Commander of the Order of the Purple Heart. I also would like to recognize the past French Legion of Honor recipients that are here with us today. If you want to maybe give a wave when I say your name. We have Corporal Sel Dante. PFC Robert Stava. And William Dunsmore. Thank you all so much for being here on this very special occasion. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Kat Miller, Nevada Department of Veterans Services Director. Kat has a hefty bio that I'm going to attempt to summarize for you in just a moment. Kat is responsible for supporting the state veterans cemeteries, veterans homes, and veterans service officer program. She served 34 years in the United States Army, achieving the rank of colonel. Beginning her career as a soldier in the Women's Army Corps, she achieved the rank of staff sergeant before commissioning as a military police officer. She has served around the world to include Panama, Germany, Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and commanded at company, battalion, and Army command levels, earning the distinction as the longest serving brigade commander in modern Army history. Kat's 3 Pentagon tours include duty as the commander of the Army Corrections Command, supervising 6 correctional facilities and developing policy for the detention of unlawful enemy combatants. After retiring, she taught bachelor's and master's level college courses at the University of Maryland and the University of Nevada, Reno, until she was appointed by Governor Sandoval and later by Governor Sisolak as director. During her watch, the Nevada Department of Veterans Services has been recognized with 4 national awards for innovations in support to veterans, Guard and Reserve, active duty serving in Nevada and their families. Kat's education includes a Master of Science degree from the U.S. Army War College and a Master of Public Administration from Roosevelt University in Chicago. Please now welcome Kat Miller.
I don't know, which one should I go with? This one or this one? This one? This one. Okay, thank you. The experts tell me this one. Thank you for your kind introduction, Leah. Wow, look at this room. We have folks here from across the valley, from all walks of life. Looks like from all branches of service. Lots of different cultures. But I'll tell you, even if I was speaking to a room just filled with Army veterans, we would be very different. For all of our similarities, we would be very different. And let me tell you a little story that illustrates that. Several years, well, a lot of years ago, my son was in Little League. Did anyone here ever play Little League or have kids in Little League? Pretty exciting stuff. But my son's team made it to the championship of our city. And he was the catcher. He's about 8 years old at the time. And so let's see if I get this right, because I'm not a real baseball player, but my husband was trying to explain to me what was going on as this game was going on. So it was the last inning. Our team was up by 1 point. And the other team run. Thank you, sir. 1 run. And the bases were loaded. And the other team had 2 outs. Right? So this is like a critical moment. And so the team's batter gets up, the other team's batter gets up, and crack. He hit this amazing line drive. Well, it wasn't all that amazing, but the shortstop missed it. And so I'm watching my son. And I'm totally focused on him. And there's this guy running from third base, and he's just going as fast as he can. And I'm paying so much attention. I can see my son go up into the air, and his glove goes out, and I'm watching. And he catches the ball. And his hand goes down, and he tags attacks the runner. And it was one of the most thrilling moments in my life. More thrilling than anything I've ever done in the military. That moment, watching my son succeed, was fantastic. I didn't know if he was out or not because I wasn't watching his feet, right? And somewhere in the stands, somebody's parents, the runner's parents, were watching his feet. And they probably saw his foot hit the plate, but they may not have seen the glove. And yet again, there was another set of parents watching their son drop to his knees in despair, the shortstop, because he had made that critical error that might mean that their team lost the game. In short, what a game looks like is completely a matter of perspective. My experience as a soldier from the end of Vietnam in 2010 was very different than that of World War II Infantryman Dean Whitaker, or World War II Bombardier. Oops, did I get that backwards? Yeah. Goodness gracious, our infantryman is Bill Grant, right? We got to keep that straight. And Dean Whitaker was our Bombardier. But my service is a lot different than theirs, so it's with a bit of trepidation that I accepted the invitation to speak today. For what do I know about service in World War II? What do I know about their hardships, their accomplishments, their terrors, and their triumphs? But I do know some things that all veterans have in common. Love of family, love of country. We're all fast learners, we're pretty loyal, and we have a wicked sense of humor. Of course, perhaps our sensitivity, our hearing, and our sense of fashion could use a little work, but hey, no one's perfect. So with the understanding that my connection to Dean and Bill may be a little imperfect, let me share some thoughts with you about them and this award. In his memoirs, Sir Winston Churchill wrote that once the U.S. had entered the war, he knew that the Allies would win, that Germany was doomed, that Hitler and Mussolini's fate was sealed, and that Japan would be ground to powder. But while Churchill may have been jubilant, it was a long, long road from Pearl Harbor to Germany's unconditional surrender in May of 1945. A road paved with hardship, with hunger, with pain, with the loss of comrades, and often with death. The men and women who trod this path carried with them the hope of freedom-loving people everywhere. Young men who enlisted at 18, like Dean and Bill, were asked to push back a strong, well-armed, committed, and oft-times vicious foe. This was one of the darkest periods of our history, but because of their service, because of their sacrifice, we emerged from the darkness as a stronger nation. I wonder what it would be like to fly with Dean deep into enemy territory, where he could expect attacks from fighters, with machine guns, cannon, and rockets, as well as heavy anti-aircraft fire from the ground, and even bombs dropped from above. Flights could last up to 8 hours, a long time in an unheated plane, open to the outside, with temperatures sometimes dipping to 60 degrees below zero. Or walk in the footsteps of Bill and other American soldiers who battled in the Hurricane Forest and the Battle of the Bulge 75 years ago this year. In Hurricane Forest, a mine could be found every 8 paces for 3 miles. And the 9th Armored Division suffered 4,500 casualties to gain 3,000 yards. That is a man down every 2 feet. A man down every 2 feet. Hitler was sure that the Hurricane would neutralize the U.S. advantage in armor, artillery, air power, and mobility. But he underestimated the courage and the pure obstinance of the American soldier. Oh, they didn't look like movie star soldiers. They were tired, cold, hungry, heads were ringing and ears were buzzing from the incessant pounding of mortars and artillery. But they pressed on and did what had to be done. As I read Bill's biography, I noticed he participated in the crossing of the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen, and it triggered a personal memory. In 1996, my battalion was securing the Sava River pontoon bridge for the crossing of U.S. forces into Bosnia. Bitterly cold temperatures and an icy wind sweeping up the Sava River turned mudflats iron hard along the river, and made working conditions almost unbearable. There was tremendous storm that week, and our base camp was swept away when the Sava breached its banks. It was below 20 degrees at night and not much warmer in the day. And like the rest of my troops, everything I had was wet, freezing, and muddy. Our unit still had to man traffic control points on each side of the bridge. Most of the unit hadn't slept in 2 days, hadn't eaten, and were physically and mentally exhausted. Frankly, I was near the breaking point when I had remembered what I read about the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen. This is required reading for every MP officer that goes to Officer Basic. The capture of that bridge had allowed 6 divisions to cross the Rhine River, shortening the war significantly. But unlike my troops, Bill and his comrades had been marching in the cold and on short rations for almost a year. Not days, surviving hellish battles along the way to Berlin. And for many who crossed that bridge 75 years ago, it was under a monstrous hail of machine gun fire, planted explosives, aerial bombs, mortar shells, anything they could muster. Yes, I was miserable, but if the men of the 9th Armored Division could survive Remagen, who were we to whine about the Sava? Later that night, a bunch of us stood around a burning pile of timber, smoldering with the lovely smell of diesel fuel. And I shared what I remembered about the crossing from my reading of the Ludendorff Bridge in Remagen. And you know what? 75 years ago, Bill, your horrific experience helped us find the courage to face those next few weeks with strength and dignity. We remember you, William, and we remember you, Dean, as generations to come will remember you. And Dean, your courage in the face of tremendously bad odds, both as a bombardier and navigator on a flying fortress and a POW, continues to inspire us. And as amazing as your military record is, the fact that you returned home and continue to serve your community as a teacher, a builder, a first responder is equally impressive. As was your work when you returned home, supporting those who had lost fathers, husbands and sons in the war. We'll hear more about Dean and William later. Perhaps someday the people of France won't remember the young American men who spilled their lives' bloods to defeat their oppressors, but they remember today. And your contributions are reflected on the face of every child who lives today, and every child born tomorrow because you saved the lives of their great-grandparents. Several months ago, I was talking to a World War II veteran who said to me, "There's no one around me who knows what we did, what we went through. Sometimes I wonder if it made a damn difference." You know, every day memories of World War II, its sights and sounds, and the sacrifices borne by Americans' youth disappear. Nevada has just over 3,000 surviving World War II veterans, and we owe every single one of them our gratitude. Mr. Bob Reed and Consul Thevenin, somebody help me with my French, that gentleman right there. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to recognize these wonderful men. I want to close by sharing an experience I had a couple months ago. I was at a baseball game, not a Little League one. This was one up north, another northern team. And during the 7-inning stretch, a stadium chair was dedicated to our POWs and our MIAs. And as you imagine, it's a baseball game, it was pretty noisy, and the announcer prepared to read the inscription. But when he stated that the chair was being dedicated to our MIAs and POWs and would remain empty until they all returned home, the entire stadium stood up. Every man, woman, and child went still. Thousands of people united in their respect for those who risked everything for the safety and freedom of all Americans. It's moments like this that give me hope that this wonderful country we call home will forever remain one of the greatest places on earth. And I know that you, and what you did, Bill, and what you did, Dean, for the world will always be remembered. Thank you very much.